Okay, we are here to continue with chapter 21, monetary and fiscal policy in the ISLM model. Factors that shift the IS curve to the IS curve: a change in autonomous consumption or autonomous factors that is unrelated to the interest rate, change in autonomous consumers expenditure, change in planned investment, change in government spending, change in tax, change in net export, or related to interest rate. Consider our 45-degree line, and this is our initial function from A at this level of output. An effect on goods market equilibrium when the interest rate is I1. So when there is shift in the IS curve, we say from I1 aggregate demand to I2 to Y1 to Y2, this is it increased from YA to YA prime. Effect on goods market equilibrium when the interest rate is I1. This is our 45 degrees, as we know. This is our initial. When there is an increase, it also increases from YA aggregate output to YA prime. Shift in the IS curve continued. Shift in the IS curve. Interest rate is plotted against aggregate output shift of the IS curve. So at this IA level of interest rate at point A, the IS curve move to the right to A prime IS2, and the aggregate output increase from YA to YA prime. Aggregate demand is plotted against aggregate output, and this is our 45-degree line. This is our initial function YA1, aggregate demand 1 and aggregate demand 2 from A prime to this, and it increased from YA to YA prime, the aggregate output. Factors that shift the IS curve: change in the money supply, autonomous change in money demand, interest rate is plotted against output, shift in the LM curve from an increase in the money supply. This is YA at fixed, but when this is the initial LM1 and LM2, when there is an increase in decrease in the interest rate, so the LM curve shift to the right. Interest rate here is plotted against quantity of real money balances, that is money demand. Effect on the market for money when aggregate output is constant at YA. This is it. But here the money supply is changed from MS1 to MS2, from A to A prime. What happened to real money balances? It also increases. Interest rate and aggregate output, interest rate and quantity of real money balances. So effect on the market for money when aggregate output is constant. Here the aggregate output is constant, but interest rate is changed. When there is an increase, it shifts the LM curve from A prime, from A to A prime, from LM1 to LM2, while here from A to A prime and from A to A prime, I prime, from IA to IA prime, and from MD1 to MD2, shift in the LM curve when money demand increases. Response to a change in monetary policy: an increase in the money supply creates an excess of money. The interest rate declines, investment spending and net export rises, aggregate demand rises, aggregate output rises. The excess supply of money is eliminated. Aggregate output is positively related to money supply. So interest rate and aggregate output. What are we trying to do here? We are trying to see the response of aggregate output and the interest rate on an increase to an increase in the money supply from point A, point 1 to point 2, from LM1 to LM2, from I to I2. Response to a change in fiscal policy. An increase in the government spending raises aggregate demand directly. A decrease in taxes makes more income available for spending. A decrease in aggregate demand causes aggregate output to rise. A higher level of aggregate output increases the demand for money. A response to a change in fiscal policy. The excess demand for money pushes the interest rate higher. The rise in the interest rate eliminates the excess demand for money. Aggregate output and the interest rate are positively related to government spending and negatively related to taxes. Here we are trying to identify or check the response of aggregate output and interest rate to an expansionary fiscal policy. From here we can see aggregate output and interest rate is plotted against interest rate. This was our point 1, then initial I1 and Y1. But as a result of the expansionary expansionary fiscal policy from point 1 to point 2, IS curve shift from IS1 to IS2. Monetary versus fiscal policy. Complete crowding out. Expansionary fiscal policy does not lead a rise in output. Increase in government spending increases the interest rate and crowd out investment spending and net export. The less interest sensitive money demand is, the more effective monetary policy is relatively to fiscal policy. This is just a summary of it. Consumer expenditure increases, response output increases, and also interest rate increases. Reason because consumption increases, aggregate demand increases, IS curve shift right. Investment I, when it increases, output increases, interest rate increases, but when there is an increase, aggregate demand also increases, IS curve shifts right, so on and so forth. But the taxes goes the opposite way. So also net export has a positive relationship. Money supply also positive, but money supply MS, when it variable autonomous change in the factor, when it increases, output increases but interest rate decreases. But what happened to the LM? LM shift right. Money demand MD, when it increases, output decreases, interest rate increases. But what happened to the LM? Shift left. And so on. This is just the summary also of it. You can check it. Effective of monetary and fiscal policy when money demand is unaffected by the interest rate. Interest rate here is plotted against aggregate of response to expansionary fiscal policy. This is I1, this is point 1, and this is Y1 when LM is fixed, and IS1 shift from point 1 to point 2 to IS2, while interest rate is plotted against aggregate output where the IS curve is fixed, while the LM curve move from point 1 to point 2, and the aggregate output move from increase from point Y1 to Y2. So also the interest rate decrease from I1 to I2. This we call it the response to expansionary monetary policy, while this response to expansionary fiscal policy. Targeting MS, that is money supply versus interest rate. If the IS curve is more unstable, uncertain than the LM curve, a money supply target is preferable, while if the LM curve is more unstable than the IS curve, an interest rate target is preferable. As we can see here, the IS curve is more unstable than the LM curve. So here, money supply and interest rate target when the IS curve is unstable and LM curve is stable. So we can take the other decision. Than the LM curve, it means money supply is preferable, while at this the LM curve is more unstable than the IS curve, then interest rate target is preferable here. ISLM model in the long run. Natural rate of level of output at which the price level has no tendency to change using real values. So when the price level changes, the IS curve does not change. The LM curve is affected by the price level. As the price level rises, the quantity of money in real terms falls, and the LM curve shifts to the left until it reaches natural level of output, that is long run monetary neutrality. Neither monetary or fiscal policy affects output in the long run. Response to a rise in the money supply, while response to a rise in government spending. From I1 to I2, point 1 to point 2, while this is the natural level of output, this is Y2, aggregate output. When interest rate declines, it makes the LM curve to shift from LM1 to LM2, and IS curve remain fixed, and this is the natural level of output. While when checking the response to a rise in government expenditure or government spending, this is the I1 at point 1, where the natural level of output is this. But when it increases to I2, it also increases to Y2, and the IS curve shift rightward, or shift to the right. But when it goes to point 2 prime, it comes back to a natural level of output, but at what level of interest? At I2 prime, while the LM curve shift from LM1 to LM2. Deriving the aggregate demand curve. At this lower level of interest rate, which is 0.1, certain Y1 level of aggregate output is achieved. But when it increases to I2, Y2, then the level of output decrease, so also up to Y3. But what happened to the LM? It shifts leftward from 1 to 2 to 0.2 up to 0.3, following or depending on the level of interest rate. While at this price level, P is plotted against aggregate output, where the aggregate demand AD is at 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. At 0.1, Y1 is attained, aggregate level of output is attained. At 0.2, decreases also at 0.3 as the price level goes up. Shift in the aggregate demand curve. ISLM analysis shows how the equilibrium level of aggregate output changes for a given price level. A change in any factor except the price level that caused the IS or LM curve to shift causes the aggregate demand curve to shift. This is price level is brought against output, while interest rate against the aggregate level of output. Shift in IS while shift in AD. What are we trying to find out here? Shift in the aggregate demand curve caused by a shift in the IS curve. So if we are trying to find shift in the aggregate demand curve caused by a shift in IS curve, let's first start with the shift in AD. At price level PA, YA is achieved from point A to point B, and level of output is YA prime, and it shifted the AD from curve from AD1 to AD2, from A to A prime. And this shift in IS from A to A prime, IA prime at point A to point A prime, where the LM is fixed, but the IS curve shift from IS1 to IS2. So also shift in the aggregate demand curve caused by a shift in the LM curve. This is at PA point A to A prime, YA to YA prime. AD moves from AD1 to AD2, while interest rate here is plotted against this shift in LM curve. This from point A, with the reduction in interest rate from IA to IA prime, from point A to point A prime, the level of output increases here from YA to YA prime. So also the LM curve shift to the right from LM1 PA to LM2 PA.